Hello, everyone. How are you today? And I am back. Stephanie Van Bark of Stephanie Creates, and I'm a small business owner. Today's show is really going to be very relevant to what we are addressing today. We are talking to a gentleman who is probably being one of the industries that's being most affected, if not directly, maybe indirectly by the tariffs. So we're going to get all the scoop about that. He's in the shipping industry. I'll let him introduce himself, but welcome. Hi, Abe. How are you?
Hi, Stephanie. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm glad to see you here. And, this is the first time I will say that I've interviewed someone in the shipping industry. So I had to do a little research. I had a little digging, but we don't get to the bottom of this. We're going to get to the bottom of
I want to hear what you got to, but
this. It's a big business. It really is a big business. Tell me who you are and what you do.
so my name is Abe Orgel, and I own and run a freight forwarding company. What that means is we handle shipments internationally for small businesses that manufacture overseas. We import into the United States, and we also service Canada as well. We
Okay.
get involved in the shipping side of things, customs, and the final mile trucking.
Okay. Now, my first question for you was, how do you get into something like this? Because it seems like, shipping feels like it would be a heavy investment as a startup. So it's not something that you trip into. How
Yeah.
did you get started and how have
Uh,
you found that?
I'll rephrase the question. Shipping is not any child's dream when they grow up and you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up?
First of all, they may not even know it's a thing. Let's
Yeah,
start with that because it took me a minute to realize, oh, yeah, I guess I do have to bring some stuff over here.
yeah. So how I got into this is actually interesting. It's coincidental for sure. So I got involved with a business that was manufacturing products in China. I was supposed to help save the business from closing its doors. They had some issues, and as I got involved, I started working with China production, and one of the productions ran late. So I was faced with the issue that the deadline is coming up, and I need to find a solution and fast. And the
Mhm.
typical, how you do shipments regularly is by boat, by container.
Yeah.
So someone put me in touch with a startup company that does air freight. Okay, it's when you load a cargo airline or even a passenger airline with the cargo hold with freight. As we befriended, I gave him the shipment and we started talking, and I said, I don't want to continue with the current business that I'm in because it, like I said, it was failing. He said, I have a sales position open, and because I shared that I want to be sales, I knew I need to be in sales. That's always been my passion. So I started doing sales for him, but because it was a startup, he could not manage it. So he promoted me to become a partner in the company, and I started growing the company. But as I was starting to grow and to take off, I realized I'm doing most of the heavy lifting, if not all of the
Mhm.
heavy lifting. And it's always my nature to go the extra mile and do things the right way, research, study it. And it came to a point where people really trusted me, and I was really the face of the company. So I approached them and I said, look, I appreciate the opportunity, but for me to continue as a partner, and he was really hands off, right? So we came to a mutual agreement, and I made him an offer for him to step away and for me to take over the
Okay.
business. So really, when I started as a salesman, the one thing that I said to myself is I don't want to be a business owner.
Right. Silly you. which
Yeah.
which you I mean, if sales is your strength, that really is interesting because that's one of those key components you really need to have in order to be successful in business. So I feel like you're halfway there.
Yes, but I came to realize that running a business is so much more than sales, and
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
boy, it's not easy.
it is. It is not easy at all. And you've been in business, I believe, if I read correctly, since what, about 8 years, a little over 8 years.
Yes,
So does
since
that mean
2016.
that was when you took it over, or that's when
I took it over in 2017. The business started in 2016, and I started almost like a couple months in from when this business started. It was really a startup. That's why I was
okay,
able to buy
great.
him out because it was it wasn't as established.
You're the first person. We've talked a lot about partnerships here. You're the first person I've heard that who has been able to explain what they did in order to dissolve the partnership. And so you now are the sole owner of this business.
Yes.
Awesome. And do you, at this point in these 8 years, consider yourself a successful, you know, I mean, I guess you're just beyond the startup window. Do you consider yourself a successful just beyond the startup window?
Yes, by the mercy of God, yes. We got it through the infancy stage, as Michael Gabriel calls it. He has the journey for small businesses. It's
Uh-huh.
infancy, and then it's adolescence, and then it's scaling, whatever the language in the myth is. Yeah. So I'm at
Are
a
you in
stage.
jail or are you in what is embassy and then what's the because I've seen that before. Embassy and what's the next one?
It's adolescence when you get
Adolescence
into,
or
yeah.
are you scaling? Which one are you at?
It's hard to tell because when you compare yourself to Fortune 500 companies,
Mhm.
you're definitely not scaling.
Adolescent.
Right. But I think every business goes through journeys of breaking through a barrier and then plateauing, where you
Mhm,
get stuck
mhm.
with the next big thing, and then you break through the next big thing, and then you're experiencing this growth period, but then again it plateaus.
Right.
So I don't think there is ever, obviously there is the transition between solopreneur, where you do everything yourself, to where you have employees. But I don't. It's hard to say, like, when is it considered scaling? When you have 10 employees, is it considered scaling? You still have struggles that
Right.
a Fortune 500 company doesn't have, right?
Right. So what were some of the things you recognize you had to break through? Because it's interesting you to explain that way because I definitely am going through the same trajectory. And what have been some methods of you getting beyond that, making that leap to the next
I
step?
see. A lot, right? A lot. So going back to the early days, it was how to wear many hats without
Mhm.
compromising one another, right? My job, 100% sales, right? I started up in the morning, sales, but I always worried about if I'm on the road, meeting customers, knocking on doors, and then a customer sends an email, a shipment comes in. I don't want this customer to have to wait for the response
Mhm.
or for a shipment to be neglected, right? So the first priority for me was to figure out how do I manage the day to day
Mhm.
so that I could focus my entire day or most of it for sales. So I had to hire a temp, someone that is going to work part time, but that I outgrew them really, really fast.
Mhm.
So I had a full time, and it was delegation. So in delegation, there are a lot of different elements that I had to learn along my journey. It's when you have people that are acting like tools, where
Mhm.
you're just telling them, you're dictating what they have to do.
Yes. Especially them taking charge and taking the
Yeah,
wrong. Yeah.
yeah. And a book that helped me a lot was, I mean, there are a lot of good books and tips that I picked up along the way, but the 1 Minute Manager, if you've seen that book before by
Yes.
Cam Blanchard,
Yes. Mhm.
I like what when he talks about 1 minute goal setting, and I don't necessarily follow it to the tip, but and for the audience, a 1 minute goal setting is where you're outlining the outcome of what we're setting out to achieve,
Mhm.
and then you you confide your trust in your employee to say, I know you could do it,
Mhm.
and you'll find a way to get to the
Together.
end goal. So
Right.
let's say the end goal is to get a shipment delivered successfully or to get a product to deliver successfully. You entrust your employee to get that done. So, and a goal is going to be something that it's timely and it's whatever smart. Everyone talks about that. But I'm using this. In the beginning, I use that a lot with conveying to the employees what outcome has to be, and letting them kind of like figuring it out how to do it.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about being on the road and knocking on doors.
Mhm.
Yours is not a traditional business where, I would imagine there is some level of social media, but that may not be the route that really gets a yes or conversion for you. What are those ways that you're identifying clients?
Social media is good for consumers, I think.
Hmm.
That's according to my experience, because when you have a impulsive buy, you're looking for impulsive drivers. Social media is one of them.
Right.
When you're looking to get a customer to become your customer long term with freight, it boils
Hmm.
down to trust. So your best method, and I know that it's difficult to deliver to many, but if you could master this, you're gonna win in the game of, if you have to win trust, is by leading with value. So
Hmm.
I'll tell you a story, and it's gonna bring the point home. I was at a trade show, and leading with value, my goal has always been, let's say I'm at a trade show, I don't have to meet everyone, but whoever I meet and greet, I want to find one piece of value that I could give them,
Hmm.
that they could take home and do it themselves without hiring me. And
Okay.
so when it comes to shipping, I will find a way to give them a tip on how to ship better for the country that they're shipping from, or the product that they're shipping, or the customs duties that they're facing. I guess we'll talk about that later, but I always made sure that I give something of value. So I'm speaking with this guy, and we're talking about they have an Amazon business, shipping cross border from Canada, and there are a few issues that they face, and I'm giving him some tips. I
Hmm.
give him a very valuable tip for cross border customs, whatever. He takes my business card and he rips it apart,
Wow.
and I was really like,
Oh,
did I
you
say
can't
something
actually-
wrong?
Were you offended?
Yeah, I was.
I hate that part.
And I said, what's that all about? Didn't you like the tip that I just gave you? He says, no, 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 Abe, this is the only business card I'm gonna look at when I get home.
Oh, nice. 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 I mean, you could have done that without ripping it, but yes, good.
I guess to put emphasis to it, right?
Good, 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 good. But that's a really good tip.
So
Because
here is how it looks like in a day to day. If you're doing sales, whether you're doing door knocking, you're doing cold calls, you do not want to ask for the sale. You do not want to get to people and say, let me quote a shipment. Let me give me your next shipment to handle, because now you're asking for business and they don't trust you, they don't know you. You
Mhm,
want to come in and remove, it's called the commissions breath. Remove that. Remove yourself from the equation. It's all about them. You
mhm,
walk into the door and you say, how's your shipping? Is there anything that could be improved with? I'm not asking for your business. I'm not soliciting your business. I'm here to see if there is anything of value that I can add.
mhm.
What do you think?
And obviously they're going to probably come up with some things that they wish were better.
Yes, but the most important thing is that they will see that your commitment is their success. You're not here to just make a sale, you're here to help them. And that's really, it builds trust. So the other thing in that regard is, if they give you a no, say they're saying, "Oh, I already have a shipping company that I work with." Don't argue with them. Just
Mhm,
say, "I'm glad that you have a forwarding company that works," right? You need to have a forwarding company that you're engaged with and that you trust, that helps your business. And as a matter of fact, there's another story that I'll share with you. There's an elderly guy, and he's been working with a freight forwarding company for, I don't know, 20, 30 years. And I walk in the door and I'm this young fellow, and I'm here to talk shipping. And he's like, yeah, I'm all set. I'm working with a freight forwarding company for 20 plus years, and I don't think I'm going to change. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I wouldn't ask you to change. I mean, 20 years does something, right? You have trust. You know them. They know you. They handle your business. I wouldn't ask you to change. And he was like, really amazed by my response. He says, actually, Abe, I think I need someone that actually speaks my language.
He probably was just he probably just didn't want to be pitched again. I can only
That,
imagine people get way overwhelmed
yeah, yeah,
with people asking them to buy and purchase and that kind of thing. I know I
yeah,
do too. It's kind of weird.
yeah,
So okay, let's talk tariffs because um, you know the folks that I tend to connect with are folks that need some type of shipping for various reasons. So I've been hearing a lot. I remember right before I was telling you about my friend who is in the printing space. He's really freaking out about the tariffs because he brings paper in from Canada. So I can only imagine. And as I was doing some research around tariffs, a lot of the concerns, of course, is increased costs for these small businesses as well as supply chain disruption,
yeah.
um, which indirectly affects you. Because if I can't bring products in from other places, if I can't afford to purchase those things or at least purchase half of what I was receiving before, how are you now able to stay um, successful or even survive during a circumstance like that?
So is your question directed to me personally or to a small business owner that is affected by the
It
tariff?
is directed to you personally, but maybe
Uh-huh.
you have heard some things also with regards to small business and what they're doing. But you
Okay.
personally,
Oh, okay. Okay. So let me ask from my perspective, from me personally as a business owner. So obviously, it puts us at a great risk, right? Because I mean, if there's no imports, then we have no business.
correct.
So the truth is, and look, let's look at the bright side. There's always going to be imports,
Hmm.
but the one thing that has not been, and it's now, and it's been the COVID, to your point, Elliot, that people realize that logistics is not a uh, one size fits all. It's a relationship that you have to have with your freight forwarder. So complex, so
Hmm.
many moving pieces that it's not like you walk into the grocery and you buy a booking off of the shelf and you get your shipments booked. You need to have someone that knows the ins and outs of the industry. And that's really where I benefit. Why? Because we as a company, we lead with a hand-holding approach. We help companies, we help with consultation guidance and support along uncertain times. When things are smooth, many people don't realize that they need the support that they actually need until things go sideways. So having said that, the fact is imports will remain, right? I mean, we're not going to become a manufacturing hub that fast. Maybe we'll become one in, a decade, or I don't know.
Right.
But until then, there's going to be shipments, and those importers will be looking for solutions from service providers that do more than just booking. And
Okay.
so, in a way, we stand to benefit from this uncertainty. But on the surface level, I'm not going to lie, it's very difficult to stay in business in such times because you have to stay up to date on all tariff related matters. So
Uh-huh.
that means that half my job is reading the fine print on all of these executive orders
Right.
and the following governmental messages and whatnot.
So now that you can inform your customers, because like you shared with me, printing is exempt. I didn't know that. I'm not a printer. I'm not doing anything with printing. But I would imagine now you're able to reach out to your customers and say, hey, you can still do this. It'll be okay. Have you found the need to have to do that? Really, as you're learning what these tariffs are all about?
It's 100% my full-time job nowadays. It's speaking with customers to find what kind of tariff applies and what kind of tariff they could be exempt from, if any at all, and what mitigating effects or measures they could take that might set off some of the additional costs. And it's people really perceptive now to different uh, processes and different what's it called? Let's call it purchasing agreements when they work with supply chain partners to figure out the right way so that they minimize the duties and tariffs they pay.
Okay. So were you okay? So I shared with you right before. The only other time I've known shipping to be, a very serious thing. Again, I'm not in an industry that requires that. Was during COVID. So do you think? And by the way, I believe what you were maybe 2 years old at the time COVID came. So that couldn't have been good.
Yeah.
That had to be a little nerve wracking. So did you learn and put into place some of these operations that are preparing you for today?
Leading the ton. Wow, this is a great question, Stephanie. I love that question. I actually learned a ton from COVID. And actually, I feel now that I'm reflecting, I think it really made me into who I am now to be able to serve my customers and to keep them informed with guidance, even expectations. I was able to tell customers when to ship, when to hold from shipping, if shipping goes up or down, and different bottlenecks that could form along the lines. And it's actually, yeah, COVID did teach me a thing or two about logistics that I would not otherwise have known or incorporated into the practices of the business.
So I was reading also something about in the 1930s, there was a Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. There were some effects of that, that went to a decrease in international trade. I'm interested to know about the industry. Is the industry prepared for this shift in how we're operating? Was there some lessons learned, or did we just forget about what happened a century ago, and almost a century ago, and we're having to start from ground level up?
The one fundamental difference, and this is a great question, to quote the Smoot and Hawley tariff, many economics are contributing the Great Depression and the scale of it to the Smoot and Hawley tariff, the
Mm-hmm,
19th tariff.
mm-hmm,
Many people speculate that without this 1930 Tariff Act, the Great Depression would not have been as severe as it was. So fundamentally, there is one very big difference between the 1980 Tariff Act and the current climate that we live in. And this is not to justify or to defend any of what we're doing right now, but
which
at
is
least
where
to
we
give
are.
context.
Mm-hmm,
So America, leading up to 1930, was the manufacturing hub for a big portion of the world. Think
mm-hmm,
of cars, furniture, metal, vessels, marine operators. They manufactured most of the vessels worldwide.
right.
So putting a tariff in place that affects the export, which it did significantly, was a very big toll to put in place.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is the biggest fundamental difference to recognize that nowadays we're not exporting nearly as much as we used to.
I was thinking that. So now you have to think globally in order to secure clientele, I would imagine.
This is, well, this is one way to decipher this, but I'm speaking mainly on the economical effects that a tariff could have on the American consumer and on the American economy. And I think we're dealing with different cards.
Okay. Okay. So are you afraid? I noticed, I told you I had to do a little research here.
Mhm.
In 2021, the cargo shipping industry was, $2.2 trillion business or globally, projected to be at 4.2 by 2031. Do you think we're still on pace for that? Or now that we're dealing with something a little differently, we're having to shift where we think the industry is going?
I can't speak on Trump's behalf, right? I don't know what he's thinking, but I can speak from the even the people that will lobby towards some sort of tariffs. Let's use Kevin Alati, for example. We
Right,
all have seen Kevin Alati's video
right, right.
of where he's like slap them with a 400% tariff, these Chinese, right? Now, he's also going to admit globalism at its core is benefiting one nation with the natural resources that the other nation has excessively.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you want to plant avocados in Miami, let's say, where you live, right? And you want to sell it to Mexico, you're going to have two problems. You know what? Your cost of planting those avocados will be more expensive than it is for the Mexican, and the quality is going to be way less. Now, think the other way around. What if Mexico starts manufacturing aircraft parts and aircrafts? The quality is going to be less, and the manufacturing cost is going to be more. So you need everyone to produce what they're best at from a quality perspective and from economical perspective. And that's globalism at its core, is benefiting one another at a cost that is lower than the alternative.
Right. So, but then, I mean, that makes fundamental sense. But with the impact of how this, I guess, trade wars, more than just the tariffs, but we're sort of in this pendulum swing of trade wars, that might slow, I would imagine, some of that, what's logical and what's happening down. And so, will that fundamentally have a problem, present a problem to a lot of industries, not even just yours?
So to bring my point home, from the current climate, it's impossible to predict, right? We don't know what Trump wants. I don't know whether he wants protectionism, which is manufacturing here, do not deal with other nations at all, or he wants fair trade. And I think the communication, the messaging has been contradicting in a way. But if he wants fair trade, assuming that 50% of the communication is fair trade, we have a 50% chance that this is where we're headed. With fair trade, globalism is only set to expand. Now, take the US out of the equation, the entire world is dealing on a very global level. Europe just implemented a new kind of way how to clear customs from one nation to the other within the European Union, and it makes it all the more no-brainer for nations to work with European unions, even if it's different countries within the European Union. So globalism in and of itself is probably gonna grow. The question is if it gets to a point where America really becomes a protectionist culture where we're not dealing with other nations, if international trade is going to drop. I think we're very far away from that happening.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Now, here's a question for you. And I think it's something I read that you posted on LinkedIn. You mentioned something about Amazon, and it occurred to me, would Amazon sort of be a competitor of yours? I mean, even though I know they're sort of retail, but they really have sort of their own sourced shipping. So is that a competitor or is that a potential client?
Is UPS a competitor?
It is a competitor.
So the answer is that we're looking at different segments of the market. Yes, Amazon is trying to get into logistics. So my answer to you is, even if they're successful with going into logistics, they're not competing with me. They might be competing with FedEx, with UPS, because they are after the same market. I am after small businesses. And I can tell you one thing, Amazon cannot cater to small businesses' needs. If you want, just go on Reddit and find how many people are set up on Amazon's, whether it's the global logistics or if it's the AWD and all the other services that Amazon is offering. But from the bigger picture, I don't think Amazon has a big future. You're competing with experienced freight forwarding companies, and I can name many big, giant freight forwarding companies. They know what they do. Comes a COVID again, you know what? I'll give you a very good example. In COVID, when you order something from Target, you got it in 2 days. I don't know if you remember this, but if you ordered something from Amazon, it could take 3 or 4 weeks to get it, even if you were a Prime member.
During COVID?
Yes.
Because I don't.
Why?
Yeah, why? Because I don't remember if I ordered anything. I think I was bored.
I lived, right? I've been living this nightmare back then. So I could tell you, I saw this firsthand on Amazon. If you order something, it could take up to 3 weeks to get it. Sometimes even more, but at least 3 weeks was the norm. When you ordered something from Target, you got it in 2 days. How come?
Right.
And the answer is Target used UPS for shipping. The other companies, I don't know, Macy's, I don't know, use FedEx. Okay, these companies, they have the infrastructure in place. COVID comes, they get a hit a little bit, they take a hit, they have to restructure their operations slightly, but they have the infrastructure to figure it out. Amazon, on the other hand, they don't have the infrastructure. Yes, they might have some thousand vans or drivers, gig
Right.
workers, but they don't
Right.
have the infrastructure to handle a COVID.
At
And
the
so
time.
my point is the same thing when it comes to overall logistics. You cannot have a marketplace, AWS, and AEWD, the warehousing, and then have a logistics arm and be successful at it all.
Right. You have to figure out how to do one well and figure the other part
Yes.
out. When I used to work at Macy's,
Okay.
secret moment. And I worked actually in the athletic shoe department. And we did rely very heavily on shipping as a collaborative with, meaning not just Macy's, but all of our allied partners would work together to ship shoes over. Um, that was to save money. And you're talking about a Fortune 500 company. As a small business, if I am a small business that really needs shipping, can you share some tools of the trade to think about that's going to make this an opportunity for me to do so at a reasonable cost and still be successful?
Yes, I would love to. So I think the right word for this is what improvements and optimizations are there in place for businesses to benefit. I would say the businesses that I speak most to are the people that import, right? If you're manufacturing direct or if you're buying from a third party that ultimately manufactures for you, you want to look at the different uh, supply chains that your shipments, that your products are going through until it reaches your final customer and question, is there anything that I can optimize so that it touches less hands or it's done in a more economical fashion? So
Right.
let's use two examples. If you're manufacturing, again, we'll use China, right? You manufacture in China and you're selling to multiple retailers, okay? And you're shipping to multiple retailers, separate shipments. What if you combine these shipments together and you distribute them locally to these retailers? How
Right.
much money could you save? And this is a question that doesn't have a right or wrong answer.
It's
And
just
it's
what they're.
probably going to change every couple of months based on the circumstances, based on the list of retailers you have, based on the quantities for each retailer, and obviously cash conversion cycle. If you're going to have to stick with inventory for extended period of time just because you're saving shipping, don't do this. It's going to
Okay.
destroy your business before you know it. Actually, let me emphasize on this for a minute. People are sometimes obsessed on cost savings on shipping that they forget on profit and success of their business overall.
Right. Right.
Yes, you sell a product at a great margin, but your business is failing. Why?
Right.
Because they don't have the cash flow to invest in proper advertising, marketing, graphics, or
Mhm.
partnerships. So you want to make sure that you're not compromising one for the other. Yes, shipping is really important, and shipping is really, it's a never-ending game. You want to check your shipping structure every couple of months to see if there's anything that you can improve.
Okay.
Now, if you're distributing locally, the same question is, what are the partners that you're using and how is it structured? And is there anything that you could do to maybe position your inventory in a different geographical area to cover more with ground shipping as opposed to air shipping
Okay.
overnight and the likes?
So what's next for you? What's your plans? What's your scale up plan? How are you going to become the greatest freight forwarding company alive?
So I realized, and this has been kind of like an epiphany moment for me.
Yes.
I have been having conversations with customers, and they were really confused with the tariffs. And this is not to say that tariffs is the only place of confusion, right? But
Mhm.
at least now this was. And what I did was, after having conversations with some of the customers, I said, let me take it and write it down and share it with all of my customers by email. And I did it once, and the responses were overwhelming.
Nice.
So I
Really.
did it again and again and again. And I feel like this has been my calling. Obviously, it's all a means to grow my client in my book of business,
Right.
but it's leading with value. I started the call with is lead with value. And the
Yes.
feedback that I receive is overwhelming. I just spoke to today, I spoke to a cold call. Okay, I still do sales, yes. Cold call, a referral actually. So I called a company that I got a referral,
Mhm.
and I said, I got your name and I want to talk about shipping or whatever. And then I get his email address and I send him an email with my proposal. And he looks at my email and he says, "Oh, I'm subscribed to your email newsletter." And I'm like, "How?" He says, "Because my dad forwarded me an email a couple weeks ago and he said I should read it because it's really, really informative. And I subscribed to your future emails because I really liked it."
That's really cool. That's really cool. So, did you get the business? That's the most important part. Did you get
Fingers crossed.
I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for
Thank
you.
you.
So thank you for so much for sharing this information for and our audience. Again, I don't know how many people are doing this manufacturing thing, but it's I am in awe of people who have the guts to do stuff like what you do. Because I'm a service. I just kind of tell you what I kind of am entertaining on media. But when you do things like what you do, it's a real investment, and you recognize that it's a real investment. And you definitely have to be skilled and ready and prepared to be in a business like this. So I wish you the great success, and definitely keep us abreast of what you're doing. But before you leave, tell us how we can find you.
So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You've seen yourself my post
Yes,
on LinkedIn. So, and I think it's only one Abe Orgel on LinkedIn not to
it
date.
is. Google's.
But you can also, I would encourage people that are involved in manufacturing to go on the website, simpleforwarding.com, and you'll see at the bottom of the page the newsletter sign up. You can sign up. Obviously, if you are importing or you know someone that imports that could use a consultation and a freight forwarder that provides value, send them my way, and I'd appreciate it. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to sharing value on LinkedIn, on my newsletter, and get as many people subscribed.
Okay, thank you so much. And I definitely will keep you in mind because I actually know somebody that might need some support. So
Thank you.
thank you again, and definitely keep us abreast of what's happening
I
after.
will. Thank you for having me, Stephanie.
Have a great one. So, crew, it was so nice to see you again, and so nice to have you tune in again. We will be right back here next week, same time. So come on back and join us. I'm gonna tune off now so I can say bye to Abe. I will check with you later, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great one. Bye bye. Yeah. Okay, it's not going off. What's happening? See, I'm learning something here. Hold on.